Today's video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. As we all know by now, VPNs are great. Using one on unsecure websites can help protect your sensitive info from being leaked. They encrypt and hide all browsing data from your internet service provider, so no governments, companies, or other third parties can spy on what you're doing online. And of course, VPNs can be used to access region-locked content by spoofing your location. With a VPN, you can see movies, shows, or anime that you otherwise would not have access to. But when it comes to all the various options you have in the VPN market, I recommend that you guys use Surfshark VPN because they like my YouTube videos, but that's not the only reason. A single subscription with them allows you to use their VPN service on an unlimited number of devices. They have all sorts of other bonus programs you get along with your subscription, and if you sign up today using code GBay99 at checkout, you'll get 83% off your purchase plus 3 months free, all while supporting our content and our channel. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring our content, but now let's get back to the video. Every year, at the end of the ranked season, League of Legends, of course, has its World Championship. Worlds, a competition over the course of a month in autumn where we get to see teams from all over the globe come together and play each other for the Summoner's Cup and, of course, the world title. And anyone who's watched League for a significant period of time probably has noticed there's a very familiar pattern that's emerged over the course of Worlds, which is we have really exciting group stages followed by a really boring and predictable bracket. While the group stage has all sorts of exciting upsets and interesting tiebreakers where even great teams might get sent home early, that's something that's notably absent from the following knockout round, where things get much more boring, much more predictable, and discernibly less exciting. There's lopsided games, less inter-regional play, and all sorts of other flaws that frequently get people asking for a change in format. And one point of contention that's brought up every single year is whether or not Riot should add a double elimination bracket. This is something you'll see all sorts of content creators asking for. You see even people that work on Riot broadcasts asking for it, and it's something that the wider community as a whole wants. Recently, Upcomer did a survey that saw 2 out of every 3 fans wants to see double elimination at Worlds. They're sick of the single elimination bracket and really want a change of pace. And I kind of disagree. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of adding double elimination to Worlds. At least just adding a double elimination bracket and not messing around with the group stage format, doing an IPL 5 kind of thing. I don't want to see that happen to League of Legends, and I realize that's a minority opinion. I realize it's a bit of a strange and odd opinion, so I want to talk about it a bit today, hopefully explain myself and why I feel like this might actually be a bad thing for League of Legends in the long run, because this is an opinion that definitely needs some explaining. To begin though, let's go ahead and try to look at this debate from all angles and start off by asking, why do people want double elimination in League? Whether or not you think double elimination is the answer, the League of Legends World Championship does have some very serious problems that are kind of making it not always the most fun event to watch, which is a shame because it's the biggest event of the year. And one of those big issues is the lack of inter-regional play we actually get to see. In early seasons of League of Legends, we got to see a lot of international competition. Across seasons 1 and 2, there was maybe a new international tournament every month or so, where all the best teams from different corners of the globe would come together and play against each other to see who was the best in the world. We got to see a lot of inter-regional play, which made it really fun to debate about whether NA was better than EU, EU better than NA, the eventual rise and domination of China and Korea. Part of the reason the regionality of League of Legends is so interesting is because the game was birthed with all these different inter-regional competitions, and the constantly changing power dynamic as the years went on was just a super fun thing to follow. But of course, that was kind of axed in 2013. With the start of the LCS era and domestic competition being the main priority for teams every year, we no longer got to see constant international battles. All we've really had now, for however long it's been, is 2 competitions each year, the Mid-Season Invitational, and of course, the World Championship. And I'm not going to knock this system. I mean, it's something that might leave a lot to be desired, but I can understand Riot's desire for some structured and stabilized leagues. But if you're only going to have 2 international competitions every year, we should see a lot of international competition at those events. The group stage is set up to make sure that every team in each group will be from a different region compared to all the other teams in the group, but there's no restrictions or anything like that in the bracket stage, and these past 2 years we've had some really boring brackets. In 2020, the way the bracket draw played out, we had essentially an all-Korean side of the bracket and an all-Chinese side of the bracket. Even though Korea and China were the 2 best regions of that season, we didn't get to see them play each other much at that World Championship, which is kind of lame. Instead, we had to see these regions play themselves in series that we had already known if we had watched these domestic leagues. Seeing something like DRX versus Damwon, Korea versus Korea, was really frustrating, not just because it was a pretty boring stomp that robbed us of international matchups, but we just knew what was going to happen. The heavily favorited Damwon demolished DRX, which we all knew was going to happen beforehand, because we had already seen this series in the LCK prior. Worlds isn't a competition that's meant to show us whether Damwon or DRX is the best team in Korea. We already know that. That's what the LCK is for. Unfortunately, this has happened again in 2021. We're seeing T1 versus Hanwha, which is another predictable all-Korean series that we knew how it was going to go before Game 1. This is something we've already seen in the LCK. We don't need to see it at Worlds. RNG versus EDG on the other side of the bracket was a little more exciting. Just at least that game went to a full 5 matches. But again, this is a series that we already know a lot about. We see this in the LPL all the time. We even came to a point where we almost had an all-Korean side of a bracket. If Gen.G and Mad Lions just had their final tiebreaker series flipped, then it would have been all 4 Korean teams on one side of the bracket, and we would not get to see a Korean team play a best of 5 against an international opponent until the grand finals. That's insane that the World Championship would have so little international competition, and we were 1 game away from that actually happening. That's not fun. This is one of the big reasons that people want to see double elimination at Worlds. If we were to add a losers bracket underneath the single elimination bracket we have right now, we would get to see more international competition. Take a look at someone like Hanwha, who just lost to T1, because of course they did. We've seen this in the LCK a million times. If there was a losers bracket, then they would be dropped down to face off against, I don't know, Cloud9 or RNG or Mad Lions. They would still be playing more games against another team out there that we would be guaranteed to see at least another international best of 5 series, including them. And that goes for all the different teams out there who lost their first round of games. That's one of the big reasons why people want double elimination, to see more international play and just get to see more play in general at the biggest event of the year. But that, of course, is far from the only issue we're seeing at Worlds, which kind of leads us to the second biggest reason that double elimination might be a good idea, which is we've seen some really boring grand finals basically for the entire history of the World Championship. If you take a look at the brackets from previous Worlds, there have been a lot of boring series as a whole, tons of 3-0s or 3-1s where things weren't all that interesting or close. But this is especially bad for grand finals. At Worlds, where grand finals is a best of 5, there's only ever been 1 series that went to a full 5 games. 2016 SK Telecom versus Samsung Galaxy. Every other grand final has been a bit of a stomp where a team has won either 3 games to 1 or 3 games to 0. You might ask yourself, why is this happening? Well, the biggest reason is we don't have any sort of guarantee that the actual #1 best team will face off against the actual #2 best team in grand finals. In fact, it's pretty likely that they might end up facing off earlier in the event. If we look at 2018 Worlds, KT Rolster, Invictus Gaming, and RNG were the 3 most talented teams going into the event, the 3 favorites to win it all before any matches began. And after IG was matched up against KT in quarterfinals, that basically became the real grand finals. after IG eked out a victory in a super close series because these teams were neck and neck in their talent, they had already faced their toughest competition of this event, which meant it was pretty easy for them to steamroll their way to a world championship. They didn't even drop another game the rest of that Worlds. The same thing kind of happened at 2020 Worlds. JD Gaming and Top Esports were the two Chinese favorites most likely to win it all, the third favorite being Korea's Damwon Gaming. But when Top and JDG were knocked out in surprising upsets by Suning, it wasn't all that tough for Damwon to steamroll their way to a championship of their own. This is another problem Double Elimination would fix really well. One of the perks of a Double Elimination bracket is you're much more likely to see the actual #1 best team play the actual #2 best team in grand finals. The reason for this being not only if they meet up earlier, like KT and Invictus Gaming, one of those teams obviously still gets to continue playing even after they lose. That added safety net allows them to continue onward and hopefully get a rematch in a grand finals later on. But on top of that, you also have the benefit of if one team is underestimating an opponent, or if they get a tough matchup against a clashing playstyle, or if they get surprised by some sort of weird off-meta strategy that knocks them out early, well, their event isn't actually over. And if they really are one of the top two teams at the event, they're more than likely to continue making their way to grand finals through a loser's bracket. I'm sure there's a lot of other issues that people have with Worlds that they think Double Elimination would fix, but these are, from what I understand at least, the two main problems. Not enough play in general, but especially not enough international play between teams is one of the big ones, and just the boring series that we often find ourselves seeing, especially in grand finals with lopsided matches. That's something that they are legitimate problems with the current World's results, and it's something that Double Elimination would seriously help to fix. But again, with all that being said, I'm not a big fan of Double Elimination myself, and let me tell you why. Part of the mystique and excitement that comes from watching a sport is a true feeling that you don't know what's going to happen. You're watching an event, you know there might be favorites, there might be underdogs, and one team might have all sorts of different advantages, more money, better athletes, a better coach, but you never know what's actually going to happen until you watch. It's totally possible that an underdog wins, because for all the advantages one organization has over another, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is who scores more goals, who gets more points, who scores more runs. That's it. And so you might fall to a deficit, you might be hopelessly outmatched, but you might also have a lucky break go your way. You might have a coach that comes up with some sort of genius game plan to scheme around your opponent and exploit their weaknesses and cause a massive upset. And this is why sports are fun, because we don't know what's going to happen. We get to see these crazy upsets happen live, these insane comebacks. You put on the rally cap, you never know what's going to happen till the fat lady sings, and that's not something that really applies to League of Legends. Take a look at something like baseball. In 1990, there was a really exciting series between the Phillies and the Dodgers. It was just a regular season game, if I remember correctly, and going into the top of the 9th inning, the Phillies, who were the away team, were down 11-3. They were down by a huge margin. It was very difficult for them to have any chance of winning. But you know what happened? They won. They scored something like 9 runs in the final inning to win 12-11. And somehow managed to win in an insane, improbable comeback. And the reason for that was because the Dodgers didn't get some sort of advantage for beating the Phillies for 8 innings. They didn't get any sort of benefit, any sort of advantage or extra ability to close out the match because they got a lead. They had the lead. That was their advantage. And if they weren't able to hold the lead until the final 9th inning, they weren't going to win the game. But of course, we all know that's not how League of Legends works. League is a game where if you get an advantage, you get rewarded for getting that advantage beyond the advantage itself. If you're a team that can win the laning phase and you get more gold, Then you can start getting more items. You can get kills. You can get an experience advantage, a larger gold advantage. Take towers, take dragons, take rift heralds, barons, Drake's Soul, take down inhibitors, and slowly overwhelm your opponent in a way that chokes the life out of them and makes it feel like they never had a chance in the game. That's not something that works in traditional sports. Traditional sports don't work that way. You don't get a small advantage and then just slowly close out the match. You have to make sure that you're not giving up a goal in the 90th minute, that you're not throwing the game away because you only played well for a half. You have to play well the entire match, and the reason you keep on watching as a fan is because you never know if a comeback's going to happen, if the underdog is actually going to win. You never know what's going to happen. That ambiguity is lost in League of Legends. If you think about watching something like Cloud9 versus Gen G, or Mad Lions versus Dom1 at this most recent World Championship, you didn't really feel like putting on your rally cap when they were losing so hard, did ya? You didn't feel like, oh, they can still make a comeback happen, this is something that's still possible, we can still win it. Your hopium, your copium that you had at the beginning just slowly faded away as you kind of saw the writing on the wall. I mean, just a few minutes into each series, you knew who the better team was, and you slowly watched that better team dismantle their opponents over the course of a number of hours in each of those series. In my opinion, the most important thing for any sport to succeed is to make sure fans don't know what's going to happen before the series begins. And that's something that League struggles with. In League, we do see comebacks, we do occasionally see some really exciting moments, some exciting upsets, but when we're talking about a best-of-5 series, where one team is clearly better than the other, we don't normally get to see big upsets occur, or huge comebacks. We might see a reverse sweep if the teams are pretty evenly matched, but if there is one team that is clearly and discernibly better than their opponent, you're normally going to see the better team win. In fact, we've never seen a North American team win a world championship. We've never seen a European team in the modern era of League win a Worlds. We've never seen any minor region come close to winning a world title, and it's for this very reason. You might be able to make an upset happen in a best-of-1, in a group stage game, but you're not going to be able to win consecutive best-of-5 series to get a world title if you're an underdog, if you're significantly less talented than the teams you're playing against. That's just the nature of the esport, though. League of Legends is a naturally snowbally game that prevents huge upsets like that from happening. We still get to see really exciting series, of course. I mean, EDG versus RNG, or versus T1 or Dom1. There are still exciting series that we will see at the World Championship, but we're not going to see those crazy kind of upsets or comebacks or insane things that blow us out of the water when we get to bracket stage. And that is the reason that I really hope we always have a single elimination bracket. If we were to simply add a double elimination bracket under the single elimination bracket we have right now, again, not doing the cool, exciting IPL 5 stuff and just having the current format plus double elimination, that would kill the remaining ambiguity that we have in League of Legends. Think about 2018 Worlds. If we go back to 2018 Worlds, which we mentioned earlier, Invictus Gaming, KT Rolster, and RNG were the 3 favorites to win it all. If you had to pick one of those teams in retrospect that was probably the best team in the tournament, it would probably be RNG. Royal Never Give Up had Uzi at the time. They had just beaten Invictus Gaming in the LPL Grand Finals not that long ago. They were kind of better than IG the entire previous LPL year, but they faced G2 in their quarterfinal matchup, and they weren't prepared for that. They weren't prepared to take on G2 and the European powerhouse that was about to dominate international play in the Western Hemisphere of League for a very long time. I mean, they got completely blindsided by how good G2 Esports were, and they lost. That was a huge upset, and that upset mattered because there wasn't a double elimination bracket that saved RNG and still allowed them to make a loser's bracket run as we would expect them to do. I mean, that might have been fun to see RNG go and win their first title with a loser's bracket, a crazy loser's bracket run after falling early on. But they didn't get that chance. We got to see a team that otherwise might have not won Worlds in Invictus Gaming win a World Championship. And we got to see G2 make it to semifinals, making it further than probably the most talented team in the world. That's really exciting. And we get to see exciting stuff like that every year because of the single elimination bracket we have. At the 2020 World Championship, we got to see a similar, really exciting and crazy run. The three best teams there were likely JD Gaming, Top Esports, and Damwon Gaming, but Suning played well above expectations in two really crazy and exciting upsets where Huang Fan got to beat both JD Gaming and Top Esports in quarterfinals and semifinals respectively. Yeah, that might have given us a slightly boring grand finals with Damwon Gaming beating Suning somewhat handedly, but that was still really exciting to see. I mean, that run of Suning to go further than they probably deserve to, and who's to say Damwon ends up beating Top Esports or JD Gaming? Maybe they only won that Worlds because of who they ended up facing in Grand Finals. The kinds of upsets that we do still see happen in League of Legends matter because it's single elim. Because there's no loser's bracket to save a team if they underperform or struggle in a particular matchup. You have to win every single game, and every single game is worth watching because once you lose a series, you're done. That's the thrill of the single elimination bracket we have right now. It allows for the occasional upset at the very least in something like Cloud9 beating Afrika, or RNG losing to G2, Fnatic making grand finals, G2 making grand finals. I don't think we see that if we end up having a double elimination bracket. I could be wrong, but that's one of the big things about single elim that I really like and that I think would be sorely missed if we were to switch to double elim. There's a number of other arguments you can make against double elimination. You can talk about how it's somewhat boring when we see a repeat of winners finals and grand finals and the other issues that might come up, but that's really the crux of my issue with a double elimination bracket. I don't want to see the few exciting upsets that occur get devalued by giving teams essentially an extra life to lose on their way to winning a world championship. We normally know who the top 3 or 4 teams are at a world championship before the event even begins. If all we care about is seeing number 1 play number 2 in grand finals, then why not have an invitational for only those 4 teams? If that's all we care about, why not just see an invitational like that? Part of the reason we make these big teams play up against North America and lowly wildcard teams or whoever might be struggling that year is because you never do know what's going to happen. And the few exciting upsets that do occur in League can really make the game feel all the more thrilling to watch, even if we still get some boring 3-0 stomps, even if we do still have some predictable outcomes. We get to see some really exciting things happen as well, specifically with the single elimination format. And that's really the crux of my argument and why I feel so strongly about this, because I feel like it's important for a game like the League to have something that can still create ambiguity in results. This video has already gone on long enough, so I'll try to beat around the bush and cut my rambling here. But before you go, I want to give one little anecdote that somewhat perfectly encapsulates how I feel about double elim. In 2021, the LPL started using double elimination for their regional playoff brackets in spring and summer about halfway through the bracket, which is something the region had never really seen before. And contrary to the opinion that you might see in the Western world, Chinese fans did not like this idea, and they were really upset about it. And there's a couple of comments that were left on various different Chinese sites that I think encapsulate my own personal feelings about if we were to add double elimination to Worlds. On the website Hoopu, which first broke the news that there would be double elim, a couple of commenters wrote, "Disgusting. Lose is not lose. Win is not win in quarters. The surprises of the game decrease. Competitive sports should always be like the World Cup. Every game is your final chance."